It's Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. UK time, and this is the Spiritual Discussion Program. I'm Saad in Southeast London, and outside here it's a bit overcast, but I would say it's been quite mild as well. The sun is still out. Joining me as usual is Gregory. Gregory, how are you and how's the weather where you are?
The sun is still out and it's been very warm.
Very warm. Okay. Very good. So, listeners, welcome to this show, the Spiritual Discussion Program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushim. And we have a topic for discussion every week. The topic tonight is, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. This is quite a famous saying from the Bible of Jesus. I just noted, actually, listeners, that when I sent out the notification today, in some messages, the text that I sent, the word who was missing. So just to be clear, the topic tonight is, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. You are welcome to join us, listeners, on this topic with any questions or comment. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with, what is the Grail message? The Grail message in the light of truth by Abdrushim is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the readers again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abdrushim. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic we're discussing tonight is, it's a quote of Jesus from the Bible: let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. You are welcome to join in the discussion by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, as usual, I like to look at the topic and look in the dictionary, the key words. I think the keyword I've chosen, really only one keyword I've chosen this time, is the word sin. So I'll just go tell you what I discovered in the dictionary. It gives, there are two meanings, or two different dictionaries I looked at. So the first one, it said sin is an immoral act considered to be a transgression against divine law. And they give example, a sin in the eyes of God. So, Gregory, can I ask you about that definition? Is that, let me just say, yeah, a good comprehensive definition?
Well, a good comprehensive definition brings clarity. Well, you also have the mention of divine. The question is, how is one to comprehend that when divine law, or whatever they care to put, to be understood? Until we have that clarity on the divine law or divine morals or whatever they care to put in there, it is only when there is clarity, which clarity is not contradictory to itself, only then can one say, yes, it is comprehensible, and therefore it is good.
Okay, so now I'm going to give the definition given by another dictionary, which says, again, this is the definition of the word sin: an act of breaking a religious law or such acts considered together. And it gives an example: in most religions, stealing is regarded as a sin. So again, Gregory, please can you say something about this definition?
It is understandable when many use the words religious. There are religious laws which have been interpreted in human understanding or human opinions. There are the laws of nature, on the other hand. The question is that which takes precedence? Is it the interpretation of religious laws or the outworking of creation laws, which at the same time is referred to as the laws of nature? So one must ask oneself, which one should one follow? True creation, true nature. The personality came into existence. The personality also comes into existence through religious laws. These are the questions many should answer.
So thank you for that, Gregory. What I want to do is, I actually want to read from the Bible where this, the quote that I have used today for the topic, which is, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." So I'm going to read that. It is a story in the Bible, given in John chapter 8, verse 1 to 11. And the title of that story, it says, "The woman caught in adultery." Then everyone went home, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early the next morning, he went back to the temple. All the people gathered round him, and he sat down and began to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman who had been caught committing adultery, and they made her stand before them all. "Teacher," they said to Jesus, "this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. In our law, Moses commanded that such a woman must be stoned to death. Now, what do you say?" They said this to trap Jesus, so that they could accuse him. But he bent over and wrote on the ground with his finger. As they stood there asking him questions, he straightened himself up and said to them, "Whichever one of you has committed no sin may throw the first stone at her." Then he bent down over again and wrote on the ground. When they heard this, they all left, one by one, with the woman still standing there. He straightened himself up and said to her, "Where are they? Is there no one left to condemn you?" "No one, sir," she answered. "Well then," Jesus said, "I do not condemn you either. Go, but do not sin again." So, dear listeners, I just read the story, which is in John chapter 8, verses 1 to 11. about the woman who was accused of adultery, and they said the punishment is stoning according to the law of Moses. And then, Jesus said this, as I say, very famous words: "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." And they all left in this, when they heard that, they actually all left. Gregory, I mean, it's incredible what happened here. And at least they were honorable. I can say that they recognized that they cannot say that nobody had committed sin. None of them had ever committed sin. So they could not judge this person just as if they can judge anyone, anybody. So Gregory, there's so many questions here actually. I'm wondering, should we judge when somebody has committed a sin? We have to, at the moment, there can be a question mark if it was a sin or not, but let's go that somebody has committed a sin and it has been observed, however, let me say, in a right way. Is it right to judge a person who has committed a sin?
The problem has always been that of being presumptuous. Who determines what the sin is? And furthermore, who determines that they have seen or observed aright? They have their opinions. That woman was brought before them, and one can imagine, and they accuse her of having committed adultery. Which adultery? The intuitive meaning of adultery, they knew not or they lacked completely. Yet, they were so bold to accuse someone of something which they themselves do not have the slightest understanding. One must take these things very seriously. When adultery is mentioned, like you have in the 6th commandment, which was given to Moses in the 10 commandments, it says, "Thou shalt not commit adultery," which intuitively means thou shalt not break the peace of a marriage. By peace, one naturally understands also harmony. This lady was not in a marriage. The question one must ask oneself: here you have a society, at that time, society of Israel, who were well protected and granted the 10 commandments to follow. These 10 commandments ensures that it is one for all and all for one. If after granting the people of Israel these 10 commandments, they could not form a society to protect their women folk and how to allow such a personality to fall into need. They themselves were not there, but they said they have seen her committing adultery. So the question remains, in the first case, they never understood what adultery is, and yet they accuse. And then they call whatever has happened a sin in accordance to their own interpretations. Therefore, to turn round and ask and say, oh, someone has committed a sin. The question one must ask, on what grounds? On what framework? By accusing some other person to have committed a sin, when the accusers themselves do not understand what the law is, what the laws of nature are, or the laws of creation, but only throw accusations to others, they themselves are the ones who have sinned. The answer Christ gave was watertight. For if any one of those who accused her had cast a stone, then he himself would have sinned. Therefore, they themselves, all of them know, they could see in their own activities how much they have violated these laws. And again, they were not doing it for the sake of the law. They wanted to trap Christ, to listen to his own words and use that one to accuse the lady and also spread rumors. So the motive behind all these activities must be seen very clearly, for it is the motive that makes something a sin or not a sin.
Thank you so much for your answer and explanation, Gregory, for this story. As you have said, there are so many angles. I'm saying from what you have said, there are so many angles to consider before you could even call something a sin. And never mind judging the sin. So I guess we have to go slowly to explore this topic, which is let him who is without sin cast the first stone. So as we started, Gregory, the first thing is to define or have a definition of the word sin before we even, and you said they didn't even understand that word sin, in spite, and not only that, they had another motive for what they were doing. So it was, you could say, maybe this is not a good example of what is sin here, in the sense of judging, how to judge the sin, let's say like that. So I want to say, Gregory, how do we define this sin then? Yeah, how are the 10 Commandments, are those the, since they're the 10 Commandments of God, are they the ones where the sin is defined, or is there more than that?
In the teachings of Christ, he made it very clear when he was asked, and who is my neighbor? And in that particular scenario, which is very clear to everyone, He says it's one for all and all for one. But the most precise of, in quotes, definitions, which gives the intuitive, precise definition of what sin is, has been revealed in the work, in the light of truth, from which work we use as a framework for all consideration. And the first sentence mentioned there, he who does not understand the words of the Lord aright burdens himself with guilt. Sin is guilt, and therefore the human personality must strive to understand the laws of nature aright. The laws of creation are right. The divine laws are right. Else, they burden themselves with guilt. Sin is guilt.
Thank you for that very, as you said, precise definition. And I'm just now wondering, Gregory, from what you've just said, does it mean when somebody feels guilt, that is the sin? That is what they must have sinned, and that's how you know it. Because many people, Gregory, you hear, even sometimes the victim feels guilt, even like somebody has been raped. I mean, I'm using a very extreme one again, and that victim who has been raped, we refer to them as a victim, that they start feeling guilt, and then because they don't understand why it can happen to them. So is that how you can know that you've committed a sin, that you feel guilt?
There are many scenarios where man or woman justify their activities. What one must consider, there are three basic areas. The intuition, which intuition springs from the activities of the spirit. The thoughts, and finally, the material action, that which we are able to perceive with our five senses. The thoughts, one is unable to see, but the effects of one's thoughts manifest. Also, the intuitive impressions. These are three different areas which must be considered. There are many who have completely shut out their intuition. So the sense of guilt is no more there. These are as if they are dead. So one cannot even count on those. There are some who, in their thoughts, are able to reflect a bit and have sense of guilt. Those ones may even be considered. Now, these three activities, the intuitive thoughts, the thoughts you have in one's head, and one's physical action, one must ask oneself, where does one feel the guilt? The most precise must be in one's intuition. So it must be left to those who have participated. It doesn't mean that you yourself have to be there physically. One can participate in terrible activities through one's thoughts, by contributing thoughts to terrible happenings, which happenings may take place very far away. In this case, the spiritual laws are what one may call the determinant. So it doesn't mean that because you yourself are far away from a place of terrible activities, that you yourself do not bear responsibility. And that is why it is admonished. Keep the heart of your thoughts pure. By doing so, one will bring peace and happiness. Else, if one doesn't keep them pure, in accordance with the laws through which one incarnated, through which one came into existence, the likelihood is that these thoughts which are not pure, being impure, will gather together, will be attracted, and before long will precipitate through someone who has not been on guard. In that particular scenario, one becomes a shareholder in that which has caused so much destruction, be it rape, be it war, whatever one may care to call it. That itself is a sin, and that should be within the conscience of those who, through their activities, have cultivated, all right, have also put in their share into the precipitation of such terrible deeds.
Thank you, Gregory, again for this real detailed explanation and in painting the picture of these scenarios that we need to look at before we, start even, calling it a sin. That's what the question was about. What is a sin there? And in terms of feeling guilt, and then, there's so many things that follow on from that. So it really is quite a deep issue, which maybe most of us haven't thought about in that depth. So thank you for that. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Aprushi. If you are interested in knowing more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1.com. Also, we are broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can also listen to the recording of the show the next day. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1 again, space, Grail message, and then space, the topic of the show, which tonight is Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Also, and the third place you can listen to us is this website, which is zeno.fm/Bless Radio 1. Zeno is ZENO.fm/Bless Radio 1, the number 1 again. And as I've said already, the topic we are discussing tonight is let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone, which is, of course, a quote from the Bible of Jesus. You are welcome to join us in the discussion with any questions or comments. You can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. And you can again call on call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, there's so many questions really, and I'm just and everything seems to need time to, explain. So, we've talked about already what is sin, how we can determine that, and then I guess the next thing, Gregory, is well, there's a number of things. I'm just thinking maybe I should go on this first. How should one redeem the sin, Gregory? Because what Jesus said in that story was, let one who has no sin, let him cast the first stone. And of course, nobody has in that situation. So, so does it mean, Gregory, it's just left between the victim and the one who's committed the sin, to come to some, I don't know how to say the right word, but come to some agreement or come to some way of redemption? How does one redeem a sin?
Again, one had pointed out from this work, the first scripts or the first saying, he who makes no effort to understand the word of the Lord aright burdens himself with guilt. Therefore, one can safely say that the human personality must strive to understand the word of the Lord aright. In understanding aright lies the first step of making atonement. For in understanding aright, first in one's intuition, in that particular scenario, the human personality that has burdened itself strive to unburden itself through the counter current that is produced now in sending the right strength to him or her, or to those who have come to harm due to its activities. All else turns out to be partial. For what many consider nowadays are only the physical manifestation of a deed. The non-physical manifestations, which manifestations also are in beyond the earthly manifestations, that is, in the ethereal, in the animistic, in the spiritual planes, where these knots have been tied, only through the right understanding of the gravity of what had taken place, only through that is man able to make atonement. Else, whilst here on earth, he or she may be considering only the physical manifestation. But the human personality must never forget that before the physical manifestation, there had been forms which it had either contributed to or had brought into being in the non-physical. Therefore, redemption, making atonement, must start from the beginning, that place where it all started from. Therefore, the need is there to understand what creation is all about, what creation is all about through the laws of creation, which laws maintain creation, which laws operate in creation. Unless the personality has the holistic view, the likelihood is that most of its activity will be partial, will be one-sided.
Thank you again, Gregory, for this answer and explanation. Now, what I want to be clear, Gregory, when somebody has committed a sin, sometimes people can ask for forgiveness, and when they recognize what they have done to the victim. Is that enough to just apologize? That for what they have, the one who's committed the sin, for that person to apologize to the victim, is that, and what if the I'm making an extra question in here, Gregory. What if that victim doesn't accept that apology? So first question, Gregory, can someone redeem just by recognizing what they have done wrong and say sorry for that? Is that sufficient? And then to the person that they have committed that sin to. And if that's and if that let me say that one first, Gregory, and then we can do the second part of it.
Well, but one must always consider the gravity. A victim, suppose the victim has passed on, and then all of a sudden you say sorry and move away. How will the victim then accept or not accept? How will the person who is doing the apology know that the victim has accepted or not? After all, the victim is gone. So, as with everything, unless one has an intuitive picture, what is said in the earthly, the thoughts of one, and the intuitive perception of one, these are three different areas. And sometimes they do not harmonize at all. Someone has committed an offense against another. The other person has passed on. And the person who precipitated just said sorry. Can you see the person's thoughts? Can you perceive the person's intuition? And yet, the person who is doing the judgment says, oh, after all, the person has apologized. Was that person able to see the manifestations of his activities in the non-earthly, and how it has affected not only that victim, but also others around who were dependent on that victim for one way, in one way or the other? So sometimes there's always a hurry to make statements, to observe from the outside without any due consideration of what happens in the inside. Only what touches the intuition, only what the intuition is able to grab, to understand. Only through such can real atonement. For with real atonement, the intuitive drive of the person who wishes to make atonement, not just mere earthly apology, that particular person will pass through the tracks, will pass through the paths through which it is able to make atonement, here or hereafter.
Again, thank you for that answer. As you mentioned, there are three levels we need to look at when an action or sin has taken place. And you just even to, and then, as you say, can we read as somebody's thoughts? Almost, you can say it's, you could almost say you can't do that. However, there's another thing that came into my mind when you were talking there, Gregory. By their deeds ye shall know them. The deeds are the actions, and but these actions, Gregory, are they? I know you've already mentioned there are three levels of the activity, but so is it the deeds, or the material deeds that we? By the deeds ye shall know them. So what they're. By their deed, you will know what they're thinking and what they're doing intuitively. Can you know it by the physical deed?
Most of the time, there is a correspondence between the manifestation, the physical manifestation of a deed, with the thoughts and also with one's intuition. So what that saying merely reveals is that you look at the dates, you perceive the dates, you see the dates. That means with the senses allotted to you, the gross material senses allotted to you, you are able to let those have an impression. Let those pick from the deeds. Let the deeds have an effect on the gross material senses that you have, which you then pass through the intellect to the back brain, and finally it gets to the spirit. It is the spirit that does the knowing. So it is the reverse, that you see the physical manifestation, and the effects of these physical manifestations is passed back to the spirit. It is the spirit that makes use of these impressions for its own maturity. So for the observing one, when it is said by their deeds, that means by what they themselves have put in creation, they reveal whom they are, whom they obey, and how they intend to proceed. There is a strong correspondence between the deeds and what then arrives to the spirit, or how the spirit expresses itself.
Thank you for that again, Gregory. And I'm now thinking, Gregory, what about this earthly law and the earthly justice? So when a sin or a crime, because they wouldn't call it a sin in the court, they will call it a crime, and they would say, okay, here there's a crime committed, and the victim and the perpetrator have been brought to court. But the issue is, Gregory, can the judge or the jury look at the three levels that you've mentioned? They can see the physical, or they were not there, but they will be made aware of the physical act of whatever the sin happens to be, and then but would they couldn't really judge, Gregory, on the thoughts and the intuitive motivation for the that act or crime, I should say. So is it possible, Gregory, in the earthly courts to have justice, maybe that's the word I want to use here, or even assessment of this type of crime? I have to use the word crime because they don't talk about sin in the courts. So, and sorry, I'm coming another question in my head, but maybe I'll hold on at the moment. So, Greg, in a court, can they judge what is the sin, if there's a sin or crime? Sorry. Yeah, can they be judging that on the more than the earthly level? Because they say provide the evidence, and the evidence is always the physical evidence. So how can they judge on the non-earthly level or physical level in a court?
Though looked at very simply, you cannot make use of that which you lack, which you do not have. On the other hand, you may only make use of that which you have. That which they have is basically, for many of them, to do some assessment on the physical reality which they have come to know or which have been presented to them. Although, if they are very intuitive people, whether it's a judge or a jury, many are able, through their personal purification, to assess the motives behind many of these things. Therefore, one cannot make a general rule about them, because there are some who are intuitive enough, there are some who are not so intuitive. What is accepted, basically, in many of these judgments are the examination of the physical facts, and therefore they base their judgment and their sentencing on it. That, however, no matter how severe the sentences are, does not absolve the person who committed the crime. It was only a penalty enforced on it externally. The happening has its own ethereal manifestation, has its own, one may refer to animistic or spiritual. There, and only there, can true redemption take place through an inner change of attitude.
Thank you for that again, Gregory. I'm just thinking, everything needs to be considered according to the laws of creation or nature. And, Jesus also said, what you sow, you shall reap. Or even we hear this law of karma. It's the same thing. What you sow, you shall reap. And that happens, you could say, independent of human human decisions or judgments, let's call it that way. So so maybe, Gregory, the real justice, hoping it will happen, with the karma or these laws of creation that we're saying, sowing and reaping, like we've said. So, and maybe, Gregory, if the justice doesn't happen on the earth, it is happen in the beyond or in the next life, as many people, think about reincarnation as if, are aware of that. So my question is, Gregory, should we leave this, I don't know what word to use exactly, the punishment or redemption to the laws of nature, to take rather than into the hands of man, if I can say that, or mankind?
Can you repeat the question? Because
yes. Okay. Sorry if I was a bit unclear. Basically, what I'm saying is that we are aware of, the law of sowing and reaping, or the law of karma, which is from the laws of creation, or as we also know it from the Grail message, the law of reciprocal action. So what I want to say, if the earthly human, should we leave it basically to the laws of nature or creation to carry out the justice rather than human judgment?
The laws of creation, through which all that is in creation came into existence. That means they operate in creation. They have always done that. They also maintain creation. They will always have an impact, an effect, and will return to every personality that which they themselves have put into creation, such that the human personality will taste of that which they have put there. Whether you have a jury or judge interfering in that process is immaterial. For the judgment which is considered from the judge or from the jury has to deal only with the physical manifestation. So, should one leave it to the laws of creation? Of course, the laws of creation will still have their effect as long as the human personality has not changed in its intuition. For when the human personality changes in its activities, filled with good volition, support for one's neighbor, deep within himself or herself, the returning threads which it initially had put into creation will definitely come. However, because it is no more in tune with these threads, that which would have struck it terribly bounces off, for it is unable to absorb the effects of these threads which carry so much danger. It's unable to absorb the threads because it doesn't vibrate along such lines anymore. It has improved himself. That really is redemption. What is done by the earthly judge, by societies, are only a semblance of justice, not real justice. Or very simply, they cannot sense very deeply of the threats that have brought most of these things into play. So the bit which they are able to have access to, that is what they base their judgment on.
Thank you again, Gregory, for this is an incredible topic. So it really helps to say go slowly, to really go into the depth and to absorb that. So thank you for that. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the knowledge, spiritual knowledge, in the light of truth. The Grail message by Uprooshing. If you are interested in knowing more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'm going to spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. let him who is without sin cast the first stone. That's a quote from Jesus in the Bible. So if you're interested in joining the discussions with any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Also, you can listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can listen to us on the next day, to the recording rather, the next day. Again on YouTube, go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1, space, Grail message, space, the topic of the show, which tonight is let him who is without sin cast the first stone. And also you can finally listen to us also on zeno.fm / Bless Radio 1. Zeno is ZENO.fm / Bless Radio 1. Again, the number 1 there. Gregory, I've received a text with a question. I'm just going to read that, and I have to say I myself am not clear what the question is actually saying, but the question is, what about intrusive thoughts which one does not want to harbor at all? So I'm in my sensing of it, Gregory, is that maybe it's about committing sin with thoughts, but I'm not quite sure. So I'll just repeat the question, and maybe the listener might want to just clarify that question. You can message us again. So the question is that, Gregory, what about intrusive thoughts which one does not want to harbor at all?
It is, well, it mentioned intrusive thoughts. Like the questioner rightly said, you do not wish to harbor these thoughts, yet these thoughts come. How will the thoughts have found their way towards you yourself if along the line you do not harbor any kindred sensing? That is one case. The other side of it is most of these intrusive thoughts only assail one because there is room for doubts. As long as one has not clarified himself or herself to a very large extent, then these intrusive thoughts appear as doubts. But as soon as the individual, harboring a firm good volition in accordance with the laws of creation, before long, the strength of these intrusive thoughts will diminish in time. And before long, they will vanish altogether, because through vigorous and firm activity, that individual has attained to inner clarity. These intrusive thoughts only approach when there is not yet inner clarity.
Thank you so much for this answer, and I hope the listener was able to follow that. Yes, they can come back again if they want to say anything further. So thank you for this answer, Gregory. Now, Gregory, you know, the other thing in that story of the woman who was accused of adultery in the story of in the Bible with Jesus, the people wanted to stone her. We know that, and also they were condemning her. So and Jesus said, let me just go and read that line. The last bit it was here. Jesus said, where are they? Is there no one left here? No one left to condemn you? No one, sir, she answered. Well then, Jesus said, I do not condemn you either, but do not sin again. So, Gregory, is it right to condemn for let's say, what we perceive to be a wrong action? Because as you pointed out, or sin, because that's the word we're looking at now, is it right to condemn? Let me say just in a simple way, condemn, not even the word sin, because it seems to even to know something is a sin is quite a, let's say, it is quite a step. So, is it right to condemn something wrong? Let me say that way.
Well, in saying something wrong, one already has a fixed view. One must understand the tone behind a condemnation. If the tone behind a condemnation is to ginger the personality for improvement by saying, this is not good enough, this is very bad, then that which lies behind that condemnation, as one may call it, is helpful, because there is a sensing that something better could be done. If, however, the motive, the tone behind the condemnation is to drag the other person down, then that in itself is not right, becomes itself a sin. So the question remains, and what is the motive force behind a condemnation? That is what the individual, the person doing the condemning, must judge for himself or herself. For, as with every case, if the reason why you made a statement that this is not good enough, so much is expected of you, and it is justified. It is justified of a human spirit. Justified because the human spirit has the inner ability to sense. That inner ability which lies with one's intuition, is demanded for use, such that all that the human spirit comes across is ennobled. So when caricatures are produced by or through the actions, the activities of a human spirit, which caricatures are a mockery of the laws that granted these talents to the human personality, such deserves outright condemnation. If, however, such condemnations have come about because there is the need for further improvement, by saying that the caricatures which has been produced are not in accordance with the expectation of those who have been granted so much, because the human personality has been granted so much. To him who had been granted so much also is demanded. If that is the reason, then human spirit is able to make a judgment. So there must be clarity, a comprehensive clarity in these matters.
Thank you again, Gregory, for your answer. Showing how important it is to see the big picture. Now, right now, in the news, the big news that has been going on for some weeks now, there's a war between Russia and Ukraine, or let's say one aggressor and one defender, and let's say most of the nations of the world are condemning Russia for their action. Now, Gregory, you could say in over history, there's not really any country that has not tried to commit violence, you can say, or war, for whatever is the reason. Somebody starts the war, and for whatever reason. Now, again, should the world condemn another nation? On the surface, it looks, yes, one country was just didn't, let's say, provoke to have a war there, to be attacked, and yet they were attacked for whatever the, let's say, difference of opinion might be. So, is it right? At the moment, this is two nations only involved, or directly involved, let's say, and the rest of the world seems to be on one side condemning the attacker. So is that correct, Gregory, in regards to what we are talking about here? Let one who is without sin cast the first stone.
In the discussion, mention had been made to the motive. Which motive lies behind their activity? By their activities, they reveal what they have deep within themselves. Therefore, if one nation produces so much disturbance in another nation through force of arms, force of destruction, it is only right that such caricatures of envy or such caricatures of greed Greed because one nation, considering that it has so-called the might, dares on another to subjugate another. That itself is not peace, even if in the battle it, in quotes, wins the war. Winning the war is not the challenge. It is winning the peace, which peace has to do with the human personalities who are involved, which human personalities have done nothing wrong, but have been subjugated because they have a neighbor. It is just condemnation for the motive, which motive has been that of envy, been that of greed, has been that of injured pride, of injured vanity. One cannot look aside and see the suffering of one's fellow human spirits, of those who have been subjugated to terror. One cannot call such compassion. For compassion is similar, equivalent to suffering with others. Would one say the aggressor has compassion by destroying those who live in peace with themselves? Will they have tried it on themselves? So it is, or it deserves the strongest condemnation, not to disturb the peace, not to disturb the harmony. In fact, such a place where there had been peace in a union, peace in a union, which union has now been called a country, in which someone comes from the outside just to destroy, to make unnecessary demands. That in itself is adultery. So you have all sorts of complications. Those who are striving to build up their lives have been destroyed just like that, because someone's pride has been hurt, because someone's envy had been hurt. For the human spirit to make progress, there is the need to use the virtues of compassion, of vigilance and of alertness, and of modesty, of grace, of faithfulness and truthfulness. These are what the human personality need to cultivate, which will help them here or hereafter to go back from their origin, the paradigm, and from there being able to support all those who are not as mature as themselves, because by then they would have become self-conscious. These sort of activities which destroys compassion, which destroys wisdom, which destroys courage, which destroys all that one is supposed to build up as virtues. Those that have been unleashed on these other people those ones become the vices. Such vices will not augur well for the build of the talents which have been sown in man. For having sown these seeds, these threads will mature and return to them sooner rather than later, here or hereafter. These threads need to come back to those who initiated one way or the other these threads. However, the period allotted for the maturity of man is not forever. For here in the world of matter, a period is granted in which the human personality needed to come to experience, to cultivate the virtues, and then go back. If they become self-conscious through their activities, they will go back home as self-conscious human personalities. If, however, they are able to become self-conscious in the period granted for the human spirit in the world of matter, before the world of matter reverts to its primeval state, then the catastrophe then becomes that they are unable to sever themselves. That means they are held within the world of matter, which world of matter had to go through disintegration. Then these human spirits also go through disintegration because they have cultivated vices, which vices are anathema to what is required as self-conscious human spirits. Therefore, they undergo disintegration and lose the human form which had been cultivated so far. That in itself is spiritual death, which had been warned against. Once all the warnings one had received in Revelation, in also many spiritual writings. That is the danger.
Thank you again, Gregory, for this picture you've painted and in this answer. It shows how deep we must reflect, and in these matters. I have had a response again from the same listener, or a question from the same listener, which I will ask in a moment. So, but before I do that, dear listeners, I want to tell you you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And if you're interested in knowing more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. You can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. We are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Also, we're broadcasting on YouTube, youtube.com, and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can listen to the recording of this show the next day. Again on YouTube, go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1, space, Grail message, space, the topic of the show, which tonight is Let Him Who Is Without Sin Cast the First Stone. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows as well. And finally, there's a third website which you can go to and listen to us, which is Zeno, ZENO.FM / Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Gregory, as I mentioned, there's a listener who sent a question earlier, and they've got a follow-up now. That is, can intrusive thoughts arise subconsciously via voluntary or involuntary exposure to a depraved immediate environment via the law of gravitation? And there's a second question on in addition there. I'll just read that one as well. How best does one deflect beyond trying to avoid these entirely, given that they can at times approach somewhat inadvertently? So I'm just going to repeat that, Gregory. And I'm thinking maybe we do have to look at it as two separate questions. They're connected questions, but we have to just deal them one at a time. So the first part of the question, Gregory, was, can intrusive thoughts arise subconsciously via a voluntary or involuntary exposure to a depraved immediate environment via the law of gravitation?
Again, you mentioned voluntary or involuntary exposure via the law of gravitation. Herein lies the answer. How did one find oneself in that environment if one has got nothing at all which is homogeneous to that environment? For whilst here on earth, it is possible that you have these challenges of terrible thoughts always around, but it is the task of man, through one's thoughts, to strive to make sure that his or her thoughts are pure in accordance with the will of his or her maker. As long as one wrestles with these doubts, wrestles with these thoughts, before long, these thoughts will vanish. Of course, these thoughts only approach when one has not attained that inner clarity. For it is at that stage that you find that these thoughts arise. Once one has attained inner clarity, these thoughts will not even resonate anymore or come near anymore. It is like you have a radio and you tune in to a particular frequency. Before you get to that particular frequency, there will be all sorts of noise. That noise is lack of clarity. Once you have attained to a particular frequency, then that noise will be minimized or will vanish altogether. Therefore, there is the need always to exercise patience, exercise courage in striving after that which is pure. In doing that, most of these so-called thoughts which are ignoble will fall by the wayside. One should not, because of all these thoughts which are likely to drag one down, one should not run away, but should seek clarity. And on their own, they will not approach. For the boldness, that boldness which one may refer to as courage, only comes through constant examination, vigorous examination. Once you are learning a language, at the beginning, there will be challenges because you haven't perfected enough certain words within you. Once through experience you become very clear, then confusion will be minimized. Doubts will be minimized and will be removed. So it will then be that one must go forward in confidence, then courageous.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I was wondering maybe there could be an issue of addiction. I mean, although it hasn't been specified in this question, you know, what I'm trying to say, the problem seems to be very severe for, you know, because you said the first step is to have clarity, but maybe they're sort of, I don't know if they have, is it possible to have your own strength to get the clarity, or you need other sort of, if you're deep into, that's why I use the word addiction, you're whatever, although it's thinking about thoughts rather than, you know, and then these thoughts seem to arise voluntarily or involuntarily on occasion. And so I'm wondering if there's some, when it's a very strong...
example?
Yes.
Can you give an example?
Can I give an example?
Yes.
Maybe I have to ask the listener for that because they're asking this question. I'm just, okay. Let's say you are, because he's giving that there is an environment which is depraved, that the person has been, let's say, involved with, and then, but now they want to leave that environment, and so there's like that has been the addiction. They've attended some place, and it's about thoughts, Gregory. So it's not about drinking or smoking.
Yes.
It's
If I
thought.
may come in,
Yes.
when we discussed the returns, it was that the human personality had put some things into creation. And therefore, it has in its environment shown that or stretched its hand to that which is ignoble, which is dark, which is depraved. Therefore, it has sunk. Now, you now have the returns from what it has sown, even in the past. They will keep coming. And along the line, it was also stressed that the human personality has the inner ability to make atonement through its change of inner attitude. In that change of inner attitude, it still has to walk away from that which it had built around itself. It still had to walk away from those returns. That process of struggling to sever itself from those ignoble thoughts through which it has contributed initially, that becomes a massive challenge for itself. So it must have been one way or the other. It has given rise to this, and now there is a struggle to ditch that which is of depravity, which is ignoble, in order to improve itself. That process is the process of clarification. For deep within the human spirit, it senses that which is beautiful, which is joyful. For it carries deep within it the sensing of the joys of paradise from which it issued. And the sensing is growing, and yet at the same time is in a morass here in the world of matter. It has to clear its path, sever itself from these ignoble traits that surrounds it, which to some extent it gave rise to initially. That is a struggle. Therefore, in a step-by-step basis, it will continue with that particular struggle, gaining in confidence in a step-by-step manner until confidence now becomes courage. It becomes courage because in its sensing, it can already within it measure some improvement. It's striving away from darkness. And that is why one must continue to harbor strong, earnest good volition. One must be patient. One must be persistent. And there must be also the absolute selflessness and dedication when it comes to one's improvement. All this can be achieved basically in silence.
Thank you again, Gregory, for this answer for the listener. Hope that was helpful, and thank you for the deeper explanation, Gregory, for to give us that understanding. Now, Gregory, I just want to look at I talked about earlier about condemning, but I also want to look at this hypocrisy of double standards, where, like I said, in history, we know at the moment there's a war between Ukraine and Russia there, but in the past we are aware of other such, although it might seem on the surface, it's a good against bad fight or war, but let's say, as Jesus has made it clear, let him who is without sin, let him cast the first stone, because everybody's, let's say, has some sin with them. So if I give you an example, Gregory, so as you know, currently we are saying Russia is, or Putin, President Putin is the people condemning him for his war. In the past, there have been there was an Iraq war in 2003 with US and Britain and a few other countries against Iraq, and it was said it was after the invasion of Kuwait, I believe. Oh, not Kuwait, sorry. It was after 9/11, 2001, and it was said that Iraq has these weapons of mass destruction and is a threat. And let's say it was a threat, even if the weapons were not there, but it was decided that by the West to invade or those countries specifically. And of course, but many, let's say hundreds of thousands of people were killed in this invasion. And it may, I don't want to compare too much in the way things are done, but let's say a lot of killing happened, and would say, in quotes, I don't want to use the word innocent, but hundreds of thousands of people were killed, and it was not, I don't want to go into the history too much about it, because it was not it seemed like a short war, but actually it was longer. In reality, it was many years. But in any case, the point is, Gregory, one side, wants to condemn the other one, and then it's, situation is different today, and it's the side doing that. But what my point is, there is the hypocrisy, Gregory. It's just who is the good and who is the bad person is what people are labeling each other. That's what the attack is about. But in reality, they're all hypocrites. In the end, they want to arm the side they like to agree with, and fight or use people to fight for them. So it happens this way. It's not really some good freedom, fighting for freedom. That's I want to say, the superficial reason that we are told. But underneath, there's no, for me, if I were to give my views, there's no way anybody can condemn anyone, not even the countries, because they're all hypocrites. They just do it when they feel it's right for them. And then why I say that, Gregory, is the world suddenly sides with...
Sorry, yeah. May I come in? Is this a question or a condemnation or a comment?
I want to show that there's a hypocrisy. That's the point I want to show. That people are condemning one side when the person who's condemning is doing the same crime. That's the point I want to make. Today it is Russia.
A crime is a crime, no matter who has done it.
Yes. So my point is, you can't. The condemnation must be done on the right basis. This is my point. There's somebody trying to pretend that they have a right to condemn someone. when they themselves are guilty of the same thing. Just not maybe 20 years ago, they were doing the same thing. So that's the point. Who has the right?
I'm sorry, you are making it.
Yeah.
Are you making a point, or you are making?
I think I'm making a point. I don't want to even ask the question because it's. I just want to point. I want to make. Yeah, maybe I just want to make it clear that it looks like one side is condemning, the whole world is ganging up against one country as they are right now. But actually, it's even, Gregory, as you are aware, our time is a bit short at coming to the end of the show, but let's say we had so many refugees coming in Europe right now, and they're being welcomed so much, and yet, let's say some other wars, not very recently, Syria and Lebanon, and not Lebanon, in Syria especially, and even Afghanistan, those refugees are not as welcome with open arms as they are now with Ukraine. So that's what I'm pointing to, the hypocrisy of the world.
Sorry, may I come in?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, because the purpose of our discussion is to examine or to explain the work in the light of truth. Which work talks of the light and talks of the truth? What you yourself have alluded to are facts. No doubt about it. These are facts. Facts are not synonymous, are not equivalent to the truth. One must make that clear. And therefore, these comments, which you yourself have made, must be looked at from that particular direction. Of course, there have been a lot of hypocrisies from very long time ago. That is a fact. What you also mentioned is also a fact. But the forum from which we discuss looks at the light, looks at the truth, and the way forward. That is what it's all about. Else, the tendency will be to lose the framework upon which we build on. And that is why one has to examine all that one intends to say based on the laws of creation. Of course there's adultery. Of course there's hypocrisy. Of course there's greed. Of course there's envy. Of course there's gluttony. Of course these are vices. That is a fact. However, the framework for the examination of the work, which framework are the laws of creation, one can already see how things are with the human spirit. And that's how is what one wishes to grant to many a personality who, like you, has doubts, has worries.
Thank you for that, Gregory. It's really, important, as you say, to see the things in the light of truth, or with light and truth, because that makes it objective and, clear. So thank you for that. Dear listeners, we've come to the end of the show tonight. Hope you enjoyed the discussion and found it enlightening on the topic of let him who is without sin cast the first stone. So I would like to read from the Grail message, the foreword, which is titled, For Your Guidance. The bandage falls, and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I'm addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing.
I'll have a look into the thing, yeah?
Oh, Gregory?
Yes.
Sorry, I can hear something in the background, so I'll just mute. Can you put yourself on mute? Just something. Okay. I'm addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and star. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. The moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you are truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God. Appreciate. Gregory, would you like to say anything to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing them a beautiful week ahead.
Thank you for that. And same from me, listeners. We'll be back again next Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time with another topic. I wish you a great week. God bless. Take care.